My name is Davis Mangold. Welcome to Hearth Farm. Hi everybody. Today I'm going to be talking about a really unique feature about Hearth Farm, and that's our spring-fed irrigation system. We use irrigation for many of our crops, and we have our traditional irrigation system that's through a well system that we have here on the farm. But the spring-fed irrigation system is somewhat unique just due to the fact that it's a spring. The irrigation technique, there's nothing different with that. Today I just sort of wanted to show you how these springs were built many years ago, going back to the 40s and 50s and 60s, and how that was the primary water source for this farm up until recently. Real quickly, just our irrigation systems here on the farm. Again, we use them for many crops. Here you'll see we're using them for winter squashes, we use them for strawberries, we use them for sweet potatoes. And with that irrigation system, typically what we do is we'll lay down a bed of plastic like you see right here. And as part of that process, our piece of equipment will put down this drip irrigation tape. And that's what you see right here, this black tape. It is a drip irrigation tape, so it slowly drips out water over time. And then what it will do is basically it just helps keep the underneath of this bed moist. It does that through this drip system you see here. So the drip tape will run the length of this bed, and that at the end of all of these beds we'll have a 1/2-inch piece of pipe that's our water system. So this pipe comes down, feeds into this drip tape, and then from this pipe, you'll see here the post, we have an underground water system, a pipe system, that basically goes all the way up this hillside right here. And here in New Hampshire, we have a lot of bedrock throughout the state, and many times what will happen is in these elevated areas here, we're pretty much at the elevation of the farm, which is where our riverbed is right over here. So it's one of the lowest spots on the farm. The difference in elevation between here and the top of the hillside here is about 300 feet. And what happens is with all that bedrock up through the forest there, the rain that comes down, the bedrock is like basically a bowl that captures all of that rock. It doesn't seep easily down into the earth. It sort of stays a little bit below the surface. And from that, gravity will pull it down the hillside. And at various spots along this hillside, you'll have water just bubbling out of the earth. And that's what we're going to show you today, is how this system was built to capture that bubbling water and bring it all the way down through the farm using gravity to create the pressure and pull it down. So that's what we're going to cover today. Let's get going up the hillside. So here we are in the woods that I was pointing to earlier. We've traveled about 200 feet uphill from that point out in the field. And in the background here is one of 5 springs that have been utilized in the past on the farm. Now keep in mind, when they found the location for these spots, for these springs, you know, they would come up during the dry season and look for areas that water was coming out of the ground. Also in the wintertime, what's unique about some of these springs is that they flow year-round. It doesn't matter how cold it is, the water continues to come out of the ground. And in the wintertime, what you will see is happening is as that water comes out of the ground, it starts to freeze, and then it will form another sheet of ice on top of the previous layer. So when you walk through these areas in the wintertime, you'll see a natural spring. They'll be bubbling out, but you'll see these layered sheets of ice. So that's another way of finding it. So they would find a spring that they knew would be a reliable spring year-round, and what they do is they would come up, and sometimes the spring would be at the surface, enough water would be coming out at the surface for it to operate properly, or they would dig a small well 3 to 4 to 5 feet in depth. And what that does is it sort of funnels all the water into a local spot. And at the bottom of that well, they'll put a pipe. And you can see here, this trench you can sort of see the imprint of this trench right here that's been dug. So what they did was they dug the shallow well 4 or 5 feet deep here. They put the pipe in the bottom, and they route that pipe all the way downhill to a storage tank. There's a holding tank, and we'll show that next, that this pipe goes to. What's nice about this is with it running water, they don't have to bury the pipe too deep because it's constantly running, so very rarely does it ever freeze up. Once they've got that pipe in the bottom of the well, many times they will take some type of can, some type of metal screen. They'll put a metal screen over the pipe to keep the sediment and the debris out, and then they'll put some kind of can over it with holes in it to sort of filter out the leaves and things that might get inside the well and clog the pipe. In addition to that, what they finally do is they'll build a structure over it to shelter it from tree limbs, leaves, animals from getting into it and things like that. So that's the structure you see right here. And next we'll take you down to the holding tank. So we've traveled down the hillside from the previous video where the spring was located. We're about midway between where the farm is and that spring is. So about 100 feet up off of the farmland. And the pipe that I described at the spring runs all the way underground to this structure, which is basically a holding tank. This structure, we're still in the woods. It's about 9 feet by 10 feet and about 9 to 10 feet deep. It's basically a concrete box that they built in the ground. And the pipe comes down into this and fills this tank up on a consistent daily basis. On the back side of this, pretty much at the top of it, you can't see it here, but on the top of it there's an overflow pipe so that this thing never gets completely filled. And the spring that's flowing downhill will fill this up to that overflow pipe. So right now it's filled up to about maybe a foot. Actually, it's pretty much even with grade right here. This tank can hold around 5,000 to 6,000 gallons of water. And that volume of water is what helps create the pressure to, in addition to the gravity, to push it all the way down the hill and to be able to irrigate those drip tape beds that you saw out there. Again, this doesn't freeze in the wintertime, even when it gets 15, 20 below, just due to the nature of the water is constantly flowing. My daughters call this the little gnome house in the wintertime because when all this gets covered with snow, it's just a neat little structure that sticks out in the woods. So this is the holding tank. On the other side of this is another pipe that comes out of the holding tank and goes all the way downhill. This is another holding tank of one of the 5 springs that's on the property. The spring is located uphill here in the woods. We're on the edge of an old pasture, and back in the day they used to bring the dairy cows through the woods out into this pasture. They would graze here, and this holding tank, the overflow that you see flowing right here, goes into this old cast iron tub. This thing's probably been here 30, 40 years. The cows would come up and have their fresh water out of the tub. This holding tank is a circular design that you can see here. They dug a big hole in the ground, stuck this in it. The pipe from the spring comes in and feeds into this, fills it up, creates a certain amount of head pressure. As it reaches the overflow level, about right here, it flows into this bathtub. There is another pipe at the bottom that flows downhill to a house that this spring supplies. And then when there's a demand for water called there, then it flows on down using the head, the pressure in this tank. Okay, now I'm back down in the field, and up in that tree line there is where this holding tank is located. And on this side facing of the holding tank is another pipe, about a 1-inch pipe that comes down the hillside, and it's distributed out to the variety of the fields here. And this is actually a field spigot that's running off of that 1-inch pipe. And just to give you an idea of the type of pressure that the head creates from the gravity and the weight in the holding tank, you can see here it's pretty significant. And this helps distribute the water all throughout the field and all the way down through the to the farmhouse. That completes today's video on the springs here at Hearth Farm. There's 5 of these springs located throughout the hillside here that supports a variety of structures and irrigation systems. And I hope you enjoy the video, and talk to you soon.